Hey guys and ladies, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today I have a very special video for you guys because this is going to be an episode of This Year in Perfume, and it's going to highlight the year 1987. So yours truly was only 2 years old at the time, but we're in the heart of the meat and potatoes of kind of my favorite years of perfume, if you will. And what you will notice from this year is that 1987 holds some fragrances from both men and women that I absolutely love. In fact, two of my most favorite female targeted fragrances of all time that I've come across in my journey are in this list. So before we hop into it though, let's do what we've been doing with these this year in perfumes and talk a little bit about the time. So 1987, a couple notable events. The first Starbucks opened. And there was the Iran-Contra affair that President Reagan at the time had to, address. The Dow Jones finally crossed over 2,000 for the first time. How about that? What are we at now? 34,000 or something? So that was only 35 years ago. How's that for a return on investment? Some songs. The two that immediately jump out to me anyways, Walk Like an Egyptian, I Just Died in Your Arms, With or Without You from U2, I Want to Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston, you get the idea. Great year. And as far as movies go, there was stuff like Platoon, there's a great movie, Lethal Weapon, another great movie. Beverly Hills Cop 2 came out in the middle of the year. RoboCop came out. Fatal Attraction came out. The Running Man, which, by the way, the book of The Running Man is way better than the movie, if I do say so myself. In fact, it's not even the same. It's not even the same story. You know, if you can find the book of The Running Man from Stephen King and read it, do it. Trust me, it's a fantastic book. They should remake that and do it correctly because the movie kind of butchered it. They got a very general idea and then they kind of went off script. All right, well, let's talk about fragrances and let's stick with the plan of before we talk about fragrances from the year of 1987 from my collection, let's do scent of the day. Where's my microfiber cloth? Okay, so this is a decant that I bought from a friend. And this is a decant of Santal Noir, which is a Dior Privé that came out in 2018. And Santal Noir is actually a very simple fragrance. It was composed by Francois Demachy. And this is one of the better Dior Privés. I'm not a big fan of the Dior Privés, I'll tell you that. And especially the last few years, he really went off script. But I would like to have a full bottle of this. I would like to have a full bottle of the older version of Leather Oud even more, actually. But I would like a full bottle of this, but I just refuse to pay $400 or whatever these are going for nowadays. This was actually a Middle Eastern exclusive, so it's a little hard for me to get. And so what I did is I just got a little decant, and I'll wear it to my heart's content. And if I do run through this entire little decant, then I'll just go buy a bottle. But what you get is 3 notes are listed: sandalwood, ambrette, and Turkish rose. Now, to my nose, I also get a little bit of an oud accord. Now, the fact that this was marketed towards the Middle East, that makes perfect sense. The oud in this feels like the rubbery oud. If you've ever smelled like Towers oud, or something along those lines, that rubbery oud, it almost smells like a burning tire. You get a little bit of that, and it smells a little bit synthetic, especially in the first hour. It's a very loud perfume, but if you give it time, if you give it a couple hours, this is a 3.5 hour dry down. If you give it time, it dries down into something absolutely beautiful. The sandalwood in this is gorgeous. I think Santal Majuscule does this better without the oud, if you will. And it's more classy. This is a little bit more rough in bigger strokes. It's Francois Demachy's patented style, you know. it is something easy to kind of pick up and wear, and the sandalwood in here is nice. It doesn't give off that synthetic fake sandalwood feel. It feels somewhat natural. And for a privé of Dior, it should. I mean, you're paying a lot of money for something like this. So I actually really like this one. This is one of the better Dior privés in my humble opinion. And I mean, I don't have a bottle to show you, but it kind of looks like a mini bottle. Okay, so that is Santal Noir. That's my scent of the day. Now we're going to get into the perfumes. And I'm going to show you a fragrance that, I'm going to show you a couple fragrances in this list, actually, that I have not shown on my channel yet. One of them, easily, hands down, is my favorite sport fragrance, okay? So I showed you guys Paco Rabanne Sport a few videos back. Sport de Paco Rabanne, it was called. I like this better. And this is from the house of Hugo Boss, and it's called Boss Sport. Look at the tennis rackets there. How 80s is that, with the tennis rackets and the golf club? It is just so 1980s. And as you can see, this bottle is a Eurocos bottle. Can you see that? I don't know what's going on with my light. Maybe I can turn it down a notch or two so it's easier for you guys to see. So it's a Eurocos bottle, but it's made in Germany. And what is tough about finding some of these older Boss bottles, there you go, that's a good shot of it, is the cap on some of them is red and the cap on some of them is black. And if you'll notice, if you go to Fragrantica and plug this in, I think the cap is red, but it still says EDT. So I don't know if they did like a marketing switch over or something. This is a little 50 ml bottle, but I'll tell you what, on a hot summer day, as far as sport fragrances go, this is the king for me, because it checks all the boxes. You know, it has that sharp opening that I absolutely love, and they accomplish that with mugwort, tagetes, and juniper with citruses. And the citruses here are beautiful, gorgeous. And then it kind of goes into this, classical masculine of the 80s feel with notes like tarragon, carnation, clary sage. You get the picture. There's a big dose of moss in the base, there's oak moss in the base, and there's patchouli and sandalwood and tonka and cedar, but it all basically comes together to give you this amazing sport fragrance. And I love how it's so piercing, and not in a way that's cloying or would put somebody off, but piercing in a beautiful way for the heat. And so for me, this is my #1 sport fragrance. If I ever did a sport fragrance list, this would be right at the top of it. I would put this just ahead of Sport de Paco Rabanne. And that's saying something, because that's a great fragrance. But to my taste, and this goes back to why I love vintage fragrances. This is a Hugo Boss fragrance that we're talking about here. Hugo Boss #1 and this are my 2 favorite Hugo Boss fragrances of all time. And they both came out in the 1980s. Ever since then, the House of Boss is kind of, on a downward trajectory, if you will. So if you can find this, and the thing about this is, it is coveted, but not in a way like, Patou Pour where you're going to pay thousands. I think I got this bottle for, I don't know, $50, something like that. Now, that was years ago, but still, if you can find this for cheap, this is a fantastic value, especially if you're in hot weather like me in Texas, where it's hot 9 months of the year. This is absolutely stunning for the heat. And it will take you on a journey to somewhere that you have not smelled any sport fragrances like this. I can almost guarantee that. And it stands out from the crowd because it's so different from the blue. You know, I went to a dance with my daughter last weekend, a father-daughter dance, and all I smelled was Sauvage. I swear, everywhere I turned, all I smelled was Sauvage. And so if you wear something like this, you are definitely going to stand out in a good way. So that's one of my sleepers for 1987. Now, if you like that kind of fresh DNA, but also old school masculines, this is one to put on the list. This is a fragrance from the house of Arrogance, and it's called Uomo. Now, they also have a fragrance called Arrogance Homme, which came out earlier in the 80s, 1982, I believe, that I have on the way. And I'm a big fan of Italian fragrances for the heat, because the Italians, you know, they give you this hey, oh, you know, this very Italian fresh, you know, they do it in a way that is very bright and uplifting, and it's just in their nature, I think. They take a fragrance. If the French do it, they do it completely different. If the Germans do it, they do it completely different. If the Italians do it, a lot of times you get these very bright citruses. It's sparkly, it's fresh. But what they've done here is they've used aldehydes in the opening to give you this you know, almost like open space feel. And then it mixes with the Artemisia, so you get the green notes, you get the old school lavender, you get the bergamot, you get mace and sage, and there's a floral heart, which is normal in these type of fragrances. I would consider this to be a take on an aromatic fougere, right? So you've got geranium, you've got jasmine, lily of the valley, carnation, and rose, but don't be put off by it, because even though it has a floral heart, it stays true to that 80s masculine feel, because it has a huge dose of oak moss, and there's leather in the base, but Italian leather, bright leather, not the leather that, not my favorite type of leather that's heavy and dark and oily like Bel Ami. This is completely different from Bel Ami. The leather is just there to kind of accent everything, if you will. And then there's vetiver, there's patchouli, there's cedar, but it all comes together to basically give you this extremely elegant, especially for someone like me in the heat. These are summer wears for me. These next few I wear in the summer. I like wearing my aromatic fougères in the summer because the aromatic notes tend to pop in the heat for me. The Santal Noir is very nice, actually. So if you can find this is long discontinued, I believe. And my bottle, I'll just show you. Let's see if you can see that. I don't know if you can see that very well. I'm not liking this light setup. It's really bothersome. But basically, if you can see that, right there, that's the distributor. You'll notice it listed as Schiaparelli Piquenz, Pikenz. I think it was then being marketed by a distributor called First. So if you can find the older version, there might even be an older version than this. But this is probably the newest that I would recommend going. Yeah, for a fougere, this is very Italian, very bright, very uplifting. Love this fragrance, and I can't wait to get its brother in the mail, which is supposed to be heavier and darker from the early 80s. My kind of fragrance. Okay, now we are going to go to a tester that I bought, and I got a great deal on it, and I think there's still some on eBay for very, very cheap. And the fragrance itself is a fragrance called Basile Uomo. Let me turn the light down on this a bit. Let's see if that helps. Basile Uomo. All right, now Basile Uomo is another Italian take. This time, this is much closer to something like, imagine you take Paco Rabanne Pour Homme and you Italian and you add that Italian zing to it. That's pretty much what you get here. It's if you're a fan of Paco Rabanne Pour Homme, this is a must smell. So my bottle is marketed by, you can see right there, Waruska and Joel, who I mentioned before. They did very good reformulations. Waruska and Joel were very good at reformulations. And Torino, Italy. This is a 100 ml tester. I think I paid $40 for this. It didn't have the cap, but I mean, so what? It's got the short ingredients list, and they use notes very similar to Paco Rabanne Pour Homme. You get basil, rosemary, thyme, lavender. There is a nutmeg and clove. There's a spiciness to it that mixes with this fruity blackcurrant thing, but it's all in the background. Basically, what you get is you get this Paco Rabanne Pour Homme DNA with Italian zest in the top. And what they've done is they've used multiple citruses beautifully. So you get this grapefruit, lemon, and then this orangey feel from the tangerine. And it is absolutely beautiful. The rosemary and basil are very prominent in the opening. The lavender here is beautiful, and then underneath it all, there's a leather base. Again, just like Arrogance Uomo, it's there to kind of accentuate the fragrance. It's not there to, this is not a leather fragrance. I mean, there's leather in the base, but it's not a leather fragrance. It's an aromatic fougere that is a green take on, you know, a citrusy green take on Paco Rabanne Pour Homme. And the Italians do it beautifully. I love wearing these fragrances when I get in the mood to wear an aromatic fougere. Now, a fragrance that made my cheapie list, maybe the king of all cheapies, actually, just in terms of price. If you had almost no money to spend and you are on a very tight budget, but you want one of these old school fragrances to test out, this is the one that I would recommend. This is a fragrance called Lomani Pour Homme. And Lomani Pour Homme is basically an aromatic fougere, a classic aromatic fougere that, let me see if you can see the writing on the back of my bottle. It says natural spray made in France. Now, my box, when I bought this, said it expired in 2007. Okay, which tells me that this is an older bottle. It was probably late 90s, mid 90s, early 2000s. I don't know how long the expirations would go on these. But as far as bang for your buck, I paid $10 for this, or something like that, $11. You can find them for $7, $8 sometimes. This is basically citruses, very similar to the last couple as far as the citruses go. But what's really amped up here is this lavender with this camphor type feel. So you get these camphorous notes, you get clove, and then you get patchouli, you get coumarin, which is, we were talking about vetiver acetate in previous videos, how it's like the #1 perfume ingredient that a perfumer needs. In fact, Yura Rose, who's an up-and-coming perfumer, sent me a video of a perfumer's organ from the 1980s, I think, early 80s, and vetiver acetate was the #1 ingredient used on that list. So coumarin is kind of like vetiver acetate is to vetiver, but coumarin is that way to tonka, basically, is the way you can think of it. It's a distilled version, if you will, an extracted version. And then there's a beautiful oak moss in the base here. If you didn't know better, you would think this is an expensive aromatic fougere if you didn't know how cheap it was. Now, I can't speak for newer versions because this is the only bottle I've ever smelled, but I mean, for the price, if you're a fan of old school fragrances and you just want that aromatic fougere DNA and you can't spend a lot of money, this is an absolute no-brainer. Now, I will say if you have more money to spend, I'll show you probably my favorite aromatic fougere from 1987 that we're going to talk about today, and that's this. This is Francesco Smalto. So it's Francesco Smalto Pour Homme, basically. But this is the EDT. I think they only made an EDT and an aftershave. But what's amazing about this is that there is just absolutely no sweetness whatsoever. This is almost sour in a way, but in a great masculine way, because this uses anise in the top, which I love. If you like aniseed, if you like the anise note, this takes anise with this green tarragon rosemary mixture, which is popular in these aromatic fougères, and mixes it with one of the most beautiful lavender notes you will ever smell in perfumery. Now, Francesco Smalto Pour Homme is also a Italian. So you can see the Italians have a DNA, if I'm not mistaken. There you go. There's the sticker on the bottom. Here's the bottom. I forgot where I bought this. Maybe Le Parfumé, maybe Enchanté. But if you have some money to spend, because these are getting a little bit more expensive and harder to find nowadays because these are long discontinued. But if you have some money to spend and you want to smell one of the best examples of a aromatic fougere that implements things like, you know, the beautiful greenery from the tarragon and rosemary, the spiciness from the there's this woody cedar, there's this spicy aniseed in the top. It's just so beautiful. And then the slug of oak moss, I mean, they just must have taken the oak moss container and went, eh. It's just absolutely beautiful, hardcore masculine to me. A woman could wear anything that they want, and I know some women that don't like sweet fragrances, because all women's fragrances in certain time periods were kind of turning sweet or florally or something. They would go to some men's fragrances, but boy, I couldn't imagine a woman wearing this. It's just so, it's almost sour in the opening because of how all of the notes kind of blend together. But I absolutely love this fragrance, and this will be getting a lot of wear in the spring and summer for me. Okay, now one of the best hidden gems, if you're a lover of old school fragrances. The next two are pure masculine, by the way. I'm going to show you two bottles because I have two. They're both vintage. The way to tell vintage on this fragrance, which is Salvador Dali Pour Homme, by the way. This is a 50 ml. This is 100 ml. The way to tell vintage is if you can see the box, there is a gold outline around the picture. Okay, so there's a picture that Salvador Dali did on the front of the box. Around it is a gold outline. The newer boxes don't have that gold outline around it. So I got this on Mercari for $25, shipping included, 100 ml. Look where the juice is, almost completely full. And these were distributed by COFCI, I believe. But there's the bottom. They used to stamp this little cheap little stamp of the batch code on the bottom. And then this fragrance is so amazing. And then what they did is they switched it up and they started to put a sticker on there with the white stamp on the bottom. So this one is actually the earlier version, this one right here, the 100 ml. The 50 ml, this is how the newer version of the old version look, if you will. Okay, so if you can find one that has this, it'll have the gold around the outside of the box. It'll only have 3 ingredients listed, and it's just heavenly. It's just what a masculine perfume should be. These are my kind of scents. It's a little bit animalic, and you know what? Thierry Vasser made this fragrance. I would love for him to make something like this for Guerlain before he leaves. But basically, this also has this aniseed opening, like Francesco Smalto uses. But this will remind you of in the background, it'll have these hints of Koros underneath it all. So if you like animalic fragrances like Koros or the next one that's coming up, I would highly encourage you to find an older bottle of this. You have to make sure it's the right version though, because if you get the newer one without the gold trim around the outside, which I did, I actually bought that bottle and I returned it because it is not what I want. I wanted an older bottle. And so I have had a chance to smell the newer formula, and they have completely toned down the animalics. The animalics actually make this fragrance because it does have that fougere feel to it, because they use lavender, anise, citrus, geranium, a lot of the same notes here, right? But what they do is they amp up the dirty notes. So there's civet, there's amber, patchouli, vetiver, and a beautiful musk. This is such an amazing fragrance. And I'm so lucky to have 2 bottles of the older formula. I will cherish this stuff. If you like wearing Koros, or here, let me show you the next one on the list from 1987. If you like wearing fragrances like this, Lapidus pour Homme, that have a little bit of growl underneath it, if you know what I mean. This is this very complex fragrance that, if you're a honey lover like me, I love honey because you can do so many things with it. Rich Mitch said this in his video the other day, and he's exactly right. You can make it fresh, you can make it syrupy, you can make it animalic. You can just do so many things with honey that I just absolutely adore. And this is one of the best honey fragrances you can buy. This is a vintage splash, which they don't make splashes anymore. They only make the sprays now. But to be quite honest, I've done a comparison video. If you're interested in learning more about some of the differences between this and the newer formulation, go watch that comparison video. It's on my channel. And I have 3 bottles of this. I absolutely love this stuff. And so this has a pineapple in the opening, but it's nothing like Aventus. And they use honey, they use orris, they use caraway seeds, lavender, oak moss. There's a tobacco note in the base too. It's just, you know, it has that kind of sweetness from the honey, but naturally sweet, not synthetically sweet like some of the newer fragrances. There's also a little bit of sweetness from the tonka bean, but then it's just mixed so perfectly with the honey, the citruses, there's amber in the base, there's sandalwood, beautiful woods in the base of this. Sandalwood and cedar, and the patchouli in this is, oh God, this is so good. This is so good. I absolutely adore this fragrance. So if you like fragrances like Lapidus pour Homme or Koros, you have to try the vintage version of Salvador Dali. This was an 87 release, and it is just mind-bogglingly beautiful. So, those are 2 hardcore masculines from 1987, 2 of my favorite masculine fragrances of all time. So then we're going to go to a bit of a different style. This was done by one of the master perfumers that I did a perfumer's portfolio video on, Gerard Anthony. And I actually left this fragrance out of that video and went back the next day and had to make almost like an apology. I felt like I did him a slight because he is such a great perfumer. And so basically what this is this is a fragrance that's called Aquitos, okay? And Aquitos was issued by the brand Alain Delon, who's a famous French actor. And this is a 50 ml splash. This is a backup 100 ml spray that I got from Anuj at Enchanté. Someone was asking me in the comments earlier, who is this Anuj you keep talking about? He's the owner of Enchanté Perfumes. Enchante is Enchante. If you just search Enchante Perfumes Canada, he will come up. And he's one of the most trustworthy, honest gentlemen that I've had a chance to come across that owns his own business like this. And he kind of specializes in these older perfumes because his father owned the shop and passed it down to him. And so they've been buying these old perfumes forever. And they've been stored properly, all that stuff. And he is one of the most honest, trustworthy guys you will come across. Sometimes you can get a great deal on his stuff. But Aquitos by Alain Delon is basically a fragrance that got Gerard Anthony presented to the people at Dior. And Dior actually said, no, we don't want this fragrance because this is not how a man should smell. And because they were going to market this as a masculine. And Alain Delon said, I'll have some of that, and took it. And thank God he did, because this composition is one of the most amazing masculine florals you can get. It is so musky and florally. The jasmine, the honey. Again, if you love honey, if you've never tried this, this has become a bit of a unicorn nowadays. Look at the shape of the bottle. It looks like a snake's head coming at you. Dun-na, dun-na, dun-na. You know, out of the jungle. And the advertising, if you look up the advertising, just search Iquitos and go to images and you'll see the old ads. There was like a snake head coming down from on top of the screen, and there were like trees along the side. It looks like you're going down the Amazon, jungle, if you will. And this fragrance has this amazing dirty floral vibe. There is a huge aldehydic note in the opening. So you get these very bright aldehydes, but the powderiness of the orris and the musk. There's civet here, and it's done beautifully. There's oak moss and leather in the base. There's also beautiful florals, rose, jasmine, lily of the valley, ylang. There's spiciness from cardamom. It's a fragrance composition that if Roja Dove put this out today in his special bottle with the purple cap and the bedazzled cap and the $2,000 limited price tag, people would be falling all over themselves for this. They would be literally jumping over each other to get it and talk about how amazing it is. But since it's a 1987 discontinued fragrance that doesn't have hype, no one talks about it. No one cares. And that is a shame. It really is an absolute shame, because this fragrance is one of Gerard Anthony's best. And he has done some of my favorite fragrances of all time. I mean, he's responsible for Azzaro Pour Homme. He's responsible for Balenciaga Pour Homme. He's responsible for Cristobal Pour Homme. These four right here should speak for themselves. And he's done other things as well. But, he did stuff like XS for Paco Rabanne, which Creed copied and basically created Himalaya and charged $300, $500 a bottle. So, his resume is top notch. And he also did, speaking of Salvador Dali, he also did a fragrance by Salvador Dali called Salvador by Salvador Dali. They named it after, the founder. And whenever you put someone's first name on a fragrance as a homage, it really says something. And I love that fragrance, but that's from 1992, so that's coming up later on. But if you want to begin your search, I would snag a bottle, because you can find it cheap, just like you can find this cheap. So those two from the house of Salvador Dali are absolutely amazing. But back to Aquitos, this is a bit of a... It's a bit of a unicorn nowadays. People are asking silly money. But, there's literally nothing like it. You know how I've said that people ask me in the comments all the time, is there anything you can recommend that is like Balenciaga Pour Homme? And I say no. There's literally just nothing in the market that will give you that Balenciaga Pour Homme DNA. Likewise, there's nothing in the market that will give you this Aquitos DNA. It is unique. It is a completely unique structure. And even amongst the crazy 80s fragrances, you know, this is a award-winning fragrance in my opinion. It's special. It's special juice. Okay, now speaking of the house of Jacques Bogart, because the Bogart group owns the Ted Lapidus. They're all kind of combined. At the time, they also owned a house called Balenciaga, and they put out this fragrance, and it's called Homme Club. Homme Club. Now, Homme Club is a flanker of a fragrance called Homme. Okay, Homme was the original, which it's kind of I'm not as familiar with the original, to be honest with you, but from what I remember, that one was released in the 1970s. This was released in 1987. Huge difference. Actually, 1972 is what they say for Homme. And this fragrance, so you'll notice my bottle says Le Club de Balenciaga. Apparently, they are the exact same fragrance. Le Club de Balenciaga and Homme Club are the same fragrance, same bottle, just different marketing. Le Club de Balenciaga went to one part of the world. Homme Club went to another part of the world, but it's the exact same thing. So this is a 50 ml bottle, okay? And so Jacques Bogart actually acquired the Balenciaga brand, their perfume license, 1 year before this came out. So this was the first fragrance that they released under the Balenciaga fragrance brand for men. And it was created by Ellie Roger. And what's amazing about this fragrance is it does something that not a lot of fragrances can do. It manages to stay interesting, but completely elegant and soft. If you're somebody who doesn't want to wear perfume and offend people, but you want to smell yourself, if you like those very personal fragrances that Chanel puts out, this would actually be perfect for you, Eugene. Because you don't like your fragrances to be screamers, but you have to wait, because what it does is it shoots out of the cannon like an absolute rocket. So the first 10 or 15 minutes, you're gonna go like your hair's on fire, you know, like you're going 150 on a motorcycle and your hair's getting blown back in the wind and it's on fire. It starts like an absolute beast, and then all of a sudden it throws itself into neutral, almost throws itself in reverse, and just completely tones down. You get this spicy, you basically get this mixture of spices and florals is what you get. There's artemisia and coriander and basil and citruses in the base, in the top, I'm sorry. The mid has this beautiful rose that comes out, by the way. The rose in this is absolutely gorgeous for a masculine. It's a little bit powdery from the orris, but it stays fresh from stuff like juniper and cypress. I wear this all year round. I would wear this in summer because of how it just tones down the strength of the fragrance in an amazing way. But there's all these interesting facets. There's olibanum in here. There's leather in this. There's oak moss, patchouli, cedar. So you get this spiciness from the cardamom and thyme. You get this floral geranium, jasmine, spicy carnation, gorgeous rose. And it just, you know, if the Balenciaga masculines were a family, this would be kind of like the shy younger brother that is in his older brother's shadow. Even though Balenciaga Pour Homme came out after this, to me, Balenciaga Pour Homme is the star. This is the guy that you think is kind of a loser. He stays to himself, but he's actually a genius. And this is a fragrance that, for fragrance connoisseurs, I highly recommend you try this. The average person might not care for it as much. It does have that 80s feel. Amazing stuff, though. I am so sad that the house of Balenciaga stopped making masculine fragrances. They have, but I mean, it's a shame what we lost with the house of Balenciaga. But I'm very glad to have a bottle of this. I'm very glad to have two bottles of Balenciaga Pour Homme, and I'm very glad to have a bottle of Cristobal Pour Homme by Balenciaga. So, anyways, that is 1987's Balenciaga release, and the first from the Bogart house after they acquired Balenciaga. Okay, these last three are bangers, and the last two are women-targeted fragrances. So this one is called, the first one we're going to do is a Creed. This came out in 87, and this is called Bois du Portugal. Now, if you are new to the niche game, okay, if you're just kind of starting, let's say, in fragrances, and you want to start looking at different fragrances, but maybe you don't want to go hunt down old bottles of, Francesco Smalto or Salvador Dali or stuff like that, but you want something that's very wearable all year round. You want, something that is classy, almost a salute to a barbershop fragrance. This right here, Bois de Portugal, is one of the most beautiful compositions. It's one of the best Creeds, I will tell you that. It's a very simple composition, but Creed does simple good. They do simple very good. It's so pleasant. It's bergamot and lavender with cedar and sandalwood and a touch of vetiver, but the star is the ambergris. So the Creed sparkly ambergris that they used to use very high quality ingredients of. I still have no clue who made this. I don't think it was Pierre Bourdon, although maybe it wasn't. He won't say. But this is a 2018 bottle. So this is actually a newer bottle. If I could do it all over again, I would have paid a little bit more, and I would have went for a older bottle. Try to find something like 2015, 2014, something like that, 2012, 2010. If you can find older bottles of this, the sandalwood note smells just unreal. I mean, it's beautiful here. The lavender sandalwood is still beautiful. This is one of the few Creeds that hasn't been destroyed by reformulations, to my nose. That's why I have a newer bottle. I got this flacon cheap, and I just couldn't say no. Even though it was a newer formulation, I know that they have somewhat taken care of this. So very classy masculine. If you wanted something to wear to a job interview or to work or to church on Sunday or, something like that, Bois de Portugal, especially in the spring when the flowers are blooming. Oh, it's heartbreakingly beautiful, honestly. I actually got a compliment from this once. I took my wife to the hospital, and the doctor walked in and said, "Wow, who in here smells good?" And it was Bois de Portugal. Now, I had just sprayed it, and I wasn't expecting to go to the hospital, but there you go. Everything turned out fine, of course. Okay, so these last two are feminine fragrances, and two of my favorite feminine targeted fragrances of all time, and two of the best value feminine fragrances I've ever purchased. So this first one I got for under $100. I can't remember exactly how much. I think I paid $75 for this. And it's a Jean Carleo creation, and it is from the house of Jean Patou, and this is called Ma Liberté. Ma Liberté. This is the EDP. The EDT doesn't have this cap. It has like a smaller cap that looks like it has a little handle on top, like a spinner on top. So Ma Liberté, I will tell you, is compared to a very a very expensive masculine Patou fragrance called Patou pour Homme Privé. Okay, so this is almost like the trial of Patou pour Homme Privé. I actually like this more. I have a sample of Patou pour Homme Privé. I will do a comparison video one day. But this takes these beautifully contrasting notes. There is vanilla in here. It is a little bit sweet, but there's also these very masculine notes. So there's lavender, there's nutmeg, there is cinnamon, there's clove, there's vetiver, there's cedar. You know, we're talking very masculine notes. Patchouli, and then there's this floral bubble that you just get around it with the lavender leading the way. So lavender kind of leads the charge, but then coming behind, bringing up the rear, you get some of the most gorgeous heliotrope, not overdone. Heliotrope can be very cloying and overtaking if it's overdone. It's done here to absolute perfection. I prefer this to Patou pour Homme Privé. That's why I don't own a bottle. This is, look at the color of the juice. It is this type of perfumery. This is right up there with some of the best Chanel's that you can think of. I mean, it's fine French perfumery to my nose, and it's a very masculine composition. Even though it's targeted towards women in 1987, this is a very masculine composition. I got this bottle completely unsprayed for 75 bucks. It is an absolute steal for that. Bottles of Patou pour Homme Privé are going for 500 to 1,000 bucks. And to get this type of composition, this level of expertise, of attention to detail, of all kind, you know, that kind of perfume dedication at this price point is absolutely amazing. It's discontinued, so if you can find a bottle, do scoop it up. And if you're a guy, do not be afraid of this, and do not be afraid of this next one, because this has been an absolute revelation for me. Even Rich Mitch, who does not like this fragrance style, he doesn't like Shalimar, and he doesn't like Le Lion, likes this fragrance. He actually bought, I believe, a backup bottle of it even. This is one of the best finds I think I've given to people on my channel. In fact, one of my subscribers, Fosco, bought this and came back and said that he thinks there's real Mysore sandalwood in here. And I almost tend to agree. It smells like real Mysore sandalwood. Let's put it that way. Oh God, this is a fragrance that is called Vanisia. Okay, so Vanisia. This is a flacon that I have. I have a backup bottle coming from Anuj, and I think I bought the last one. He's holding it for me. Thank you, Anuj. And so Vanisia is a fragrance that Creed claimed in the marketing that it came out in 1899, and it was for the Spanish queen, and who happened to be the great niece of Marie Antoinette of France. Can you just imagine Olivier Creed sitting in his office making this stuff up? This obviously did not come out in 1899. This came out in like 1987. But the composition here is a simple but beautiful, absolutely beautiful compositions. One of the most beautiful fragrances I've ever smelled in my entire life. It basically uses 6 notes. Bergamot in the top, some of the best bergamot, right there with Shalimar. Right there with Shalimar, that level of bergamot, and Shalimar has a huge dose of bergamot. And then Bulgarian rose, jasmine, but it's not this heavy indolic jasmine. The jasmine just kind of blends with everything else. Some of the most lovely amber and some of the most beautiful sandalwood you will ever smell. And then what smells like real ambergris. Again, this is when Creed used to use real ingredients. To my nose, it smells like they used to use better quality ingredients in the old days. And vanilla. And beautiful Guerlain vanilla. Like, imagine that Guerlain vanilla that you know and love from fragrances like Shalimar. The difference between this and Le Lion is Le Lion goes the route of the labdanum. It's labdanum heavy. Le Lion is the best labdanum fragrance of all time. But if you like Le Lion, you have to smell Venezia. Absolutely have to. I got this entire flacon for under $200. It was like $180. And I think I'm actually paying more for the 75 ml that Anuj is holding for me. So I got an absolute steal on this flacon. I could smell it radiating out of the box. I thought it spilled before I even opened it, but it didn't. It was just I can smell it all around this cap, and I'm like a dog with a bone. Oh, it's just absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous, and it's marketed towards women. Do not be afraid of this. Le Lion is completely unisex. Shalimar was marketed towards women. It's completely unisex. I will do this is not a top 10 vanilla fragrances, and this will definitely be on my list. So Venezia is my final fragrance from 87. I know I don't have everything from 1987. Obviously, somebody, you can't own it all. Some other fragrances from the year 1987 that I just, don't own, that I know are hits, if you will. Lancaster came out. Fendi for Women came out. I've never smelled that. There is Bowling Green by Jeffrey Bean. I don't own that. There is Elizabeth Taylor's Passion for Women. I don't own that. I have Passion for Men. It's amazing. There is a Sergio Tacchini fragrance that I have on my wish list that I don't own. And Colors de Benetton for Women came out in 1987 as well. I have the men's version, but I don't think that was 87. So there's obviously other fragrances that came out in 1987 that are not on the list. If you guys have any recommendations for me, do please let me know. I love seeing your faces in the comments. If you have experience with some of these fragrances, please let me know. And I really appreciate everybody's support. And like I said earlier, I think I have the best 500 initial subscribers that a new channel could ask for. I love the passion and the love of fragrances that you guys share with me. So cheers, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow with another video. Bye-bye.